Okay. Thank you for joining. How do I pronounce your first name?
Pardon, sir?
How do I pronounce your first name?
First name, Suhrid.
Yeah.
S-U-H-R-I-D. Suhrid.
Okay, Suhrid. That's how you pronounce.
Like Hriday.
All right, like Hriday. Okay. Suhrid means a good heart.
Literally.
All right, literally, fine.
It means friend.
That's. We also have Pranjal with us. Pranjal, can you hear me? Pranjal, and
hi.
yes, hello, Lavanya. Lavanya, can you hear me?
Sorry.
Lavanya, Lavanya. Pranjal, did you respond? Did you say hi? Yes. Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Please let me know. You can also write in the chat box if you can hear me.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me start with this session, this live session. Welcome to the live session on literature and coping skills. Now that we are at the fag end of this course, so I hope you have enjoyed and you have enjoyed participating in the course, and you have found at least some part of the course to be interesting and important. So now we can actually take your queries, your questions related to the course, related to your, your comments, your observations related to your course participation experience. Okay, but before that, let me start with, give you a brief description of this course. As you all know, this is all about how important coping skills are in our lives, and how we can develop coping skills through various ways. And this is one of those ways through which we can develop coping skills. Now, the question is, most often when I interact with participants of different kinds, they generally ask me this question, why literature? Okay. So in one of the sections in this course, you might have come across an answer to this question, but let me repeat it for you. So literature is one such thing that gives us a world of simulation, because it is a simulation of life with its various shades right in front of us, because it is all about creating a story of life and putting a character in a certain condition, in a certain situation, and then observing that character from a distance to find out how that particular character behaves or responds to a certain situation or behaves in a certain manner whenever this character is faced with a certain situation. Because we can expect all kinds of situations in life where we have to not only respond, but also make decisions that will help us overcome the challenges, that will help us, stay with the good times. But then you all know that good times are not guaranteed. And no human being can, claim to have a good time forever, because we all struggle between two very important modes, the survival mode and the safe mode. We all want to be in the safe mode. That means very satisfied, contented, unmoved by any challenges. We don't have any worries in life, but that's not a condition which we can guarantee forever. So the moment there is a challenge in front of us, we are promptly pushed into something that is called the survival mode. And in the survival mode, we have to do a lot of things. We have to cope with the challenges. We have to respond to the challenges in a way so that we can overcome the challenge and ensure a safe passage back into the survival mode. So that is how all our lives go on. So whenever we find ourselves in the survival mode, coping skills are the skills which will always come to our rescue. And that's the reason why it is very, very important for all of us to develop great coping skills, because we can expect a challenge to be right in front of us anytime. So most often those challenges come without knocking. So they don't give us a signal or a warning that they are approaching us. So whenever we are suddenly faced with certain challenges, these coping skills are the only set of skills which help us pull ourselves out of those challenges and then ensure a safe passage back into the safe mode. So that's the reason why it's important that we develop coping skills. This is one way of developing coping skills, because we can see an entire life unfolding in its various shades right in front of us. So you can pick any piece of literature, any piece of novel or play or poetry, whatever it is, irrespective of that, you'll always find a character, you'll always find a person who is put into a certain situation, and then you can simultaneously or alongside, you can experience how that character responds to that particular situation, that particular challenge. So those works that actually talk about challenges, they impress us more because they help us learn how to cope with challenges. Because it's always easy to live with happiness, because that's not challenging. We all love that. We all are very, very comfortable. That's not at all challenging. But it's challenging, it's difficult when it comes to anger, when it comes to sadness, fear, disgust. So these are the emotions that trouble us. So coping skills are all about developing the right kind of emotional balance, so that we do not give in to one kind of challenging emotion, we surrender, and as a result of which we are promptly pushed into things that we call all kinds of negative emotions. Like, we may be pushed into fear, anxiety, depression, heartbreak, and then in order to help ourselves come out of these challenges, we can think of entering into further and bigger traps like substance abuse or even eating disorders. And these are the things that this course has presented to all the participants. And then as you have walked through all these segments, you might have found that in each of these segments, there is a talk about something very, very important, a challenge, and then how that challenge can actually be taken care of by developing certain coping skills. And in order to make this process easier, we have picked literary texts, in this case, poems, and then with the help of those poems, we show you how one particular character is struggling with a certain challenge, a certain existential concern or existential question, and then how that person finds a way, or whether that person finds a way, or that person fails to find a way out of that existential question. Okay, so, and that's how we become one with the character, and then we get to see how those existential questions, those existential concerns can be taken care of. Because at one point in the course, there is a talk about mirror neurons. That is how we begin to respond. That is how we begin to empathize with the others around us. Sometimes we feel like, experiencing the same kind of pain in ourselves. For example, somatic empathy. So where you begin to feel the same kind of pain as somebody else at a distance is experiencing. Or you begin to feel the same kind of emotion, that is empathy, as somebody else is experiencing. So you become one with the character, one with the person, and then you begin to feel the same kind of experience. So that is how the simulation, we call it literary simulation and literary communication. So literary simulation happens in this way. And these days, you all know that with the help of computer simulation, people are creating a completely new world, and then they may make people participate in those worlds and then find out what's wrong and what's right. So literary simulation gives you an opportunity to enter into a world of experiences that are replete with emotions. And then you can develop some greater insight or deeper understanding of how things are, how the challenges are actually, making living difficult. And then you also learn how these challenges can be overcome with a certain set of coping skills. So that's why this course has been titled Literature and Coping Skills. And it has been a modest attempt at presenting an important idea through a selection of certain literary texts, and then, with an objective to helping the participants come to terms with these issues, so that this word can be spread across the society, and we can help the young people come to terms with these challenges so that they can find a way out of these challenges. So that is what the course is all about. Now, I would like to end here, and then I would like to take your queries, your questions. I'd love to answer, I'd love to respond to your comments, your observations, and various other things. So it's over to you now. You can unmute yourself one by one, and then you can come out with your queries. Yes. I think I have been audible to all of you. Can you please confirm? Yes. Anybody else who can confirm whether I have been audible to all of you? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for responding. Now I can take your questions. Now we can, interact with each other. So you can come up with all your queries, your questions related to the course components, and things that are associated with the course components. Yes. Can we? Okay. I have a question in the chat box. Suhrid Bhatnagar has asked whether this course is a part of MA English at IIT. Not yet, Suhrid, because we do not find a course of this nature in India as yet. because not many IITs or many other institutions and universities have developed a course of this kind. And this is not yet a part of the master's program at, this MA English at any IIT. We do not offer a master's in English at our IIT yet. But then I also know that this is not being offered as part of any MA English program at any other IIT. But then I would definitely like to see a course of this kind to be a part of the master's program at any IIT or any other university or institution. Any other queries? You can please write your queries in the chat box so that I can take them one by one and respond. Yes, it has an MCQ segment. The final test paper has an MCQ segment, as I had shared in the discussion forum, that will go for 25 MCQs, and all those questions for that section will be from mostly from the assignments, not the exact questions. They are related to the questions that were put in the assignments, but they, you'll not find a repetition of questions. Okay, so that's it. And all these questions are related to the segments, the course components, in fact, the course segments. There are three sections. Section 1 MCQ, and then section 2, I think 3 sections, Pratyusha? Yes. Section 1 MCQs and section 2 short answer type. There are very short answer type questions, then short answer type questions, and one long answer type question. So that way it makes it 4 sections. Section 1 MCQs, and then very short answer type questions that can still be asked to write your answers in about 20 to 25 words or 30 words maximum. And thereafter there is a short answer type question, and then the last one is long answer type question. And this is just one long answer type question. Okay. So that is it. I think I answered your question, Pratyush. Okay, thank you. So any other? No, it is 1 mark each. 25 questions, 25 marks. "25 questions, 25 marks. The total paper is of 75 marks, because you'll be earning 25 points from your assignments that you used to submit every weekend, or every week rather. Yes. Any other queries?
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yes. Good evening.
Yeah, this is Devdut Mukherjee from Calcutta.
Yes.
Sir,
Hello.
first
Hello,
of all, first of all, it was a very nice learning experience, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, I had a question. What is the fear of death called?
The fear of death.
Yes.
Okay. So that is thanatophobia.
Yeah, sir. But sir, in one of the assignments, this question was there, and I
remember.
couldn't.
I remember.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I remember.
Yes.
You pointed out that there was some issue with that. So later I spoke to the people concerned, but then I remember and I acknowledge that lapse. Okay, so
Oh,
it should
thank you,
be.
sir. Actually, I was thinking whether in some other angle it would be personality depending on something. That's why I was asking, sir. Nothing
No,
like that.
that's perfectly fine. That's thanatophobia. All right.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
thanatophobia. All right. Yes, that's a very all right. There are two questions in the chat box. Yeah. This is from again Suhid Bhatnagar. Can you suggest any book on the subject? So which subject are you talking about? Are you talking about coping skills or the combination of literary texts and coping skills? Or you're talking about any other aspect of the course? Because it's a combination of literature, psychology, that is everyday psychology, and everyday neuroscience. So that you might have experienced during the course. That's a combination of literature, psychology. By psychology, I mean positive psychology, and then everyday neuroscience. So you also get to know about certain aspects of the brain, certain hormones, and then there's C afferent tactiles. If you remember the vagus nerve that I talked about in one of the segments, touch starvation, skin hunger. So these are some of the things that you generally come across when you do everyday neuroscience. So can you clarify, Suhrid, which subject are you talking about, so that I can respond accordingly? You can write that in the chat box. Yeah, literary texts for coping skills. Of course. There are a couple of very interesting books. You have my mail ID, I think, or I'm going to share that mail ID in the chat box. So I have shared my mail ID in the chat box. So just drop me a blank mail or just a hello mail. I'll be sending you a list of books which you can go through in order to develop your understanding of how literary texts are very closely associated with coping skills, or how literary texts can actually help you develop great coping skills. Okay. So I would like to share a very interesting and important piece of information with all the participants on board. There is an institute for this particular thing in the United States, an institute for poetic medicine. So in which poetry is used as medicine, it's alternative medicine. So interestingly, that is one of its kind. And that tells you the power of poetry, that tells you the power of literature, how it can help you develop great coping skills. Okay, so Suhrid, you can write an email to me and I'll be sharing a list of the books with you. And then I'll come back to another question by 9 BD or 9 DBD. So can you please name yourself? But that's an interesting question. So have you been able to name yourself? Okay. So yes, the question is, how can we practice these coping skills? Okay. How can we practice these coping skills? Of course, I mean, we all have challenges of different kinds. And when you know how to practice these coping skills, for example, most of those challenges are related to fear, anxiety. And if I can help you recall the kind of anxiety that I have talked about in one of the segments of this course, decision-making anxiety, which is one big type of anxiety that most young people face when it comes to making decisions, making choices for important life choices or life decisions. So decision-making anxiety. So when it comes to fear, anxiety, and then heartbreak, trauma, there is every likelihood, there is every possibility that one is subjected to some kind of trauma. So trauma is not necessarily of a physical kind. It's largely of a mental kind. So your physical trauma can actually help itself heal after treatment. But what about the mental, the psychological trauma that most people experience every day? It can result from failure. It can result from, social stigma. It can result from exclusion. It can result from a variety of reasons. So when we develop our coping skills, with the help of those coping skills, for example, if you remember in the segment on heartbreak, I talked about a reappraisal as a coping skill. So reappraisal is one thing. For example, two people have been friends for long, and one bad day, they had a fight, and then each of them begin to blame the other. So that's exactly where this reappraisal skill, coping skill, will be of great help. You can just sit calmly, quietly, and think about those good old days. All those wonderful times that you were together, you and your friend spent. And then you go for a balancing act. Try to see which one is heavier, your good old days or just one bad fight. And then you will suddenly find that that one was heavier, and this is of no consequence. This is hardly of any importance. So that will help you go back to your friend and say that let's forget that bad day because we have had such wonderful times together. So that's exactly your reappraisal skill, your reappraisal coping skill will help you. So this is one such skill, a reappraisal that you can apply. So we all know whenever there is a heartbreak, partners begin to blame each other. Okay, so that leads to some kind of psychological snowballing. You start with a small snowball, and then that acquires a huge proportion, a huge shape, and this psychological snowball is going to destroy you if you do not take care of it. So that's exactly where reappraisal will come to help. And then, during the course, I talked about, especially while talking about fear of death in the first segment, that is, death be not proud. I told you, we all have fear of death. But then, does that mean we'll stop living? Certainly not. But then how do you overcome the fear of death? I mean, see how that character in that poem has been able to overcome the fear of death by challenging death, by looking up to death. And you see, There are occasions in the history of cricket, if I can cite an example from cricket, there are occasions in the history of cricket when minnows or weak teams have been able to beat the most, important ones or invincible sides, cricketing sides like Australia or West Indies. So you can go back to 1983 and think of how India won the World Cup in 1983 for the first time by defeating the giants of world cricket. So when you sit down and think what actually, led to the victory of a very weak side like India against the giants of world cricket, they must have done something to overcome their fear. So if you do not do that, fear is going to engulf you. It's going to overwhelm you. So that is how, there are occasions when we have to bring in these coping skills, and that will help. Okay, there are several coping skills that we can put to use for different occasions. So I think I answered that question. And then, I'll go back to, yes, a question here. Yes, hello, Mohit. You have written, my name is Mohit. Hello. What are the coping skills for caregivers? That's a very interesting question, because caregivers are very, very vulnerable, because there's a reason why it is so. Because caregivers run the risk of burnout. We call this empathy burnout. That means if it's good to have empathy, it's good to practice empathy, to cultivate and practice empathy. And empathy comes to us alongside emotional intelligence, because it helps, together they help us understand the mental condition, the emotional condition of a person, or the psychological condition of a person, and they help us mold our behavior accordingly. For caregivers, empathy is the most important quality, it's the most important skill. They have to develop, they have to cultivate empathy skills. Because caregiving is impossible if you cannot understand the perspective, which is cognitive empathy, the perspective of the other. If you cannot understand the emotional state of the other, that means affective empathy. So if you cannot understand affective empathy or cognitive empathy, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to perform your caregiver tasks. But at the same time, you need to understand that you have to draw a line where you need to stop being empathetic. If one doesn't do that, it will lead to some kind of empathy burnout. That means you'll be experiencing problems yourself by cultivating and practicing too much of empathy. If you remember, during the course, I mentioned the name of Kellogg's Management School professor. I'm writing the name again in the chat box. Adam Waits is a Kellogg's School of Management professor, and he has written a very interesting article. The title of that article is, I'm writing the title. If there is any typographical error, please ignore. The limits of empathy. So if you have not read that article, do read it. It's a very interesting small article, The Limits of Empathy, which appeared in Psychology Today. It's some very famous magazine. It's a web magazine, Psychology Today. So you go through that article, you'll find that, yes, he has warned people against excessive empathy. because that will lead to empathy or emotional burnout. And sometimes, even worse, sometimes it can lead to what we call emotional numbness. It will lead to emotional numbness, that you'll become emotionally passive. You'll suddenly, stop experiencing any emotion or showing an emotion. It will lead to emotional passivity or emotional numbness. We generally, tell people who are emotionally numb, we generally say, don't you have any emotions? What we mean by that? We mean this, emotional numbness. They are the people who are not moved by emotions. For example, a surgeon performing surgery, okay, say a cardiac surgery, the surgeon cannot afford to have any kind of emotion while performing surgery. Okay, the surgeon can never have any emotion, because an experience of emotion will lead to some kind of errors while performing the surgery. So emotional numbness, that's kind of, deliberate emotional numbness. One is cutting off oneself from emotions. So one has to put a limit to one's empathy. All right. So Hirit, did I respond to your question? The coping skills for caregivers. So caregivers need to cultivate a lot of coping skills. For example, listening. That is empathetic listening. All right. Because if you do not know how to listen, and that too reflective listening, empathetic listening is otherwise known as a reflective listening. A reflective listening, focuses on the speaker, makes the speaker more important. There are various types of listening strategies. We all know there are certain listening strategies in which we begin to interfere with the speaker, and we encroach into the private space of the speaker while listening. But empathetic listening is different. When you tell the listener, the speaker, that yes, I'm getting your point, I'm trying to understand you. Do you know one of the biggest questions that most young people, it doesn't mean that others do not pose this question, but most young people pose this question, because I keep interacting with the younger ones at my institute as well. So I come across this question. Most young people think that nobody understands them. People don't understand me. My family members don't understand me. My parents don't understand me. My friends don't understand me. So this is one of the biggest complaints, biggest concerns and complaints of the young ones, that this world doesn't understand me. People don't understand me. And they are true to a large extent, because this question arises when a young person tries to carve out a separate identity for himself or herself. This is the question, because that's exactly where you need to you begin to do different things for yourself. And there is every likelihood that people outside will fail to understand you. So in order to understand you, if you find one friend who shows good coping skills, so that that friend of yours can listen to you, can empathetically listen and take your perspective. That is cognitive empathy. Take your perspective. You might have come across theory of mind principle, theory of mind. So if that person can actually understand your perspective, you'll feel extremely relieved. You'll feel absolutely good. Yes, there is somebody who understands me. You might have come across this statement, your friends issuing such statements. There's just one person in this world who understands me. Because we need at least one person who can understand. And for that particular act, we need certain coping skills, and this reflective listening or empathetic listening is very, very important. Right, Suhrit? Yeah. So any other queries or questions from the other participants on board? All right, there's a question again from, can you please name yourself, or is it Mohit? Oh yes, Mohit. Fine, fine. Thank you, Mohit. So what is the most common reason behind self-sabotaging behavior? Yes, that's true. In one of the segments of this course, especially while talking about emotional well-being, yes, I'll come to that, Swirit. While talking about emotional regulation, emotional well-being, you know, what are emotions? They are energy fields. They are energy fields. They create a great amount of energy in us. For example, you're experiencing the emotion of love. You're feeling very, very energized. You're experiencing the emotion of happiness. You feel like jumping. We do that. We jump. You shout. You're experiencing anger. You feel like yelling at others. You're experiencing sadness. You feel like crying. So, and shedding tears. You see, whenever we experience some kind of emotion, that lead to some kind of outcome, because the energy gets channelized in the form of any outcome, and that happens. So whenever we come across different kinds of emotions, they create some kind of energy fields in us. Apart from that, there are two instincts. These instincts are inherent, inborn. We do not have to cultivate those instincts. I have talked about these instincts in one of those segments on emotional well-being. The one is life instinct, which is otherwise called eros instinct. That is from the Greek god of love, eros instinct or life instinct. The other is the opposite of life instinct is death instinct or thanatos instinct. Death, thanatos instinct. So we all are born with these two instincts. That means we have eros instinct and we also have thanatos instinct, life instinct and death instinct. Life instinct makes us take care of ourselves. When you see a person who begins to groom himself or herself, then you know that the person is experiencing a greater amount of life instinct. That means the person is taking care of himself or herself. Okay, life instinct. While driving, you're taking all those precautions, safety measures you follow. That means your life instinct is stronger in you. But then you come across people who go for rash driving. They don't give a damn. They don't bother. They don't care. There are people who are aggressive behavior. Okay. There are people who don't bother about what they're doing and how they appear. So then you know that the death instinct is strong in the person. And there is always a struggle between the life and the death instinct to create a balance. So if the life instinct becomes stronger, you fall in love with life, you become proactive, you begin to protect yourself, you become caring, you become sharing, you take care of others, you take care of yourself. When the death instinct becomes stronger in somebody, then the person becomes very aggressive. The person, begins to show destructive behavior. And most often, such destructive behavior or behaviors are directed towards others. They are directed externally. But there are occasions when those behaviors are also directed internally. Especially when you cannot direct them or channelize them externally for some reason, people begin to direct them internally. And that's exactly what leads to sabotaging behavior. Self-harm is a phrase for that. Self-destructive behavior or self-harm. Okay. And that's exactly when you do not know how to regulate your emotions. Therefore, emotional regulation is one of the most important coping skills. Emotional regulation. So how often people who experience heartbreak, they promptly get trapped in some kind of destructive behavior. For example, it can be taking to drugs. It can be self-harming, causing wounds to oneself, bruises to oneself, anything. And then that can go to an extreme level as well, which will result in some kind of destructive behavior, either suicide or heavily self-sabotaging behavior. So that is it. So therefore, it's very, very important that we learn the art of emotional regulation, how to regulate our emotions. So we all know that there is a regulator for fans, okay, ceiling fans. So you can always control the speed of the fan. If you do not need a high speed, you can always bring it down. Similarly, these emotions go up and down. So if you develop that regulator, you can control the level of your emotion. So therefore, emotional regulation is very, very important. Okay. So there is again a query from Suhrid Bhatnagar. Every person need a confidant, right? The world lacks confidence to be. Yes, are you saying something? So every person needs a confidant. The world lacks confidence to be. So do you mean to say that we don't have confidence in the world? Please help me understand this question. Do you mean to say that this world doesn't have confidence? No, that is not the case. So there is something called talking therapy. Okay, talking therapy. Oh, all right, that was just a comment. Fine. So whenever we do not find a confidant, we feel like that. Okay, let me use a very famous statement from a very famous novel. This is the opening line of that novel. The title of the novel is Invisible Man. Okay, I'm sorry, The Invisible Man. The novel begins with this line: I am an invisible man because nobody wants to see me. Okay, now you can understand. I'm invisible because nobody wants to see me. I'm visible otherwise. Since nobody wants to see me, I'm invisible. Can you experience the pain? Can you feel the pain with which this character is saying this? Nobody wants to see me. Okay. All right. So of course, yes, why not, Pratyush? So sympathetic nervous system. All right. My goodness. At the same time, I can assure you that you also have a parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. You also have a parasympathetic nervous system. So that, the heart rate that goes up also comes down. So the parasympathetic nervous system.
Hello.
Yes. The parasympathetic nervous system helps us come to terms with these things. Okay. So short and long answer type questions. There are two types of short answer type questions. As I told you, there are very short answer type questions. I mean, you need to use 20 to 30 words to write an answer to those questions. Okay. And there are short answer type questions as well, in which you need about 50 words or 100 words, Pratyusha? Okay. So in about 100 words maximum, you can answer those questions. So there are two short answer type questions, very short and short. And then
basically we have to type the answers.
Yes, yes.
So basically we have to type the answers.
Yes, since it is a CBT based, I think, but then I'm not very sure about it, whether you can also write the answers. I do not know much about it, but as far as I know, this, since this is a CBT, computer-based test, so I have to type your answers while answering these questions. Okay. Yes. Very short, for very short answer type questions, you need to use 25 words to answer. And for short answer type questions, you need to use 100 words to answer. There will be just one long answer type question, and that for that you need to use about 500 words to answer. Okay. Yes, of course, you need to type your answers. 25, I have already answered that question, Adarsh. There are 25 MCQ in section 1, 25 MCQs. Each of the MCQs carrying 1 mark. So that means 25 marks in all. All right. So the structure is 25 MCQs, then 20 for very short. There'll be 10 very short answer type questions. Each of those questions carries.
There are 8 questions, you have to answer only 5.
Right. Okay, 25, 20. And then?
And again
20.
And then 10.
Then 10. That makes it 75. Yes. Right. Yes. There are a few subjective questions, as I told you. Okay. And then there is a question in the chat box. While taking important life decisions, how to cope up with mental paralysis? Of course, mental paralysis is quite obvious, because when it comes to very important life decisions for which you run the risk of being blamed afterwards. So there is every chance, there is every possibility that it will lead to mental paralysis. Okay, but then it is a choice between action and inertia, inaction. So if I can cite the example of the road not taken, you can see the person is experiencing a similar, decision-making paralysis. Okay, so decision paralysis, where the person knows very, very well that if I make one decision, if I choose one of these two roads lying in front of me, it may happen that I succeed. It may also happen that I fail. And then it may also happen that for a long, long time, I'll be telling this with a sigh. Okay. It may also happen that I'll be telling this with a sigh of relief or with a sigh of regret. So you're very right when you say that such decision-making challenges lead to mental paralysis. But action is the only way. So this paralysis can be, because, you know, paralysis is inaction. We all know that. If somebody suddenly has paralytic attack, that means that part cannot act any further. Since the word paralysis presupposes or relates to action as its opposite, we have to act. So one can always think, one can always, you know, wait for a while, but then one has to act. So procrastination is no answer to decision-making paralysis or mental paralysis. That means you cannot delay the decision for a long time. You can delay it for a reasonable amount of time, a reasonable period of time, but thereafter one has to make a decision. So action is the only answer. So that is the coping skill. To act is a coping skill to overcome mental paralysis. I think I answered your question, Shubham. Uh, 25, I said others, 25 words to answer, very short. Okay, very short answer, 25 words. Yes, and that has made all the difference. You know, one big reason why this is a very ambiguous expression. An ambiguous expression is given at the end of that particular point, the road not taken. That has made all the difference. You know, it can go either way. That has made all the difference. Decision making is one such thing that should not have a precedence. For example, there are certain life instances or life situations where we have to make a decision. And while making decisions, we cannot depend on a precedence. For example, I cannot say my friend decided to do that, so I have a precedence. Since I have a similar life situation, I'll also do that. Since my friend succeeded by making that decision, and I'm in a similar situation, I'll also make a decision. So decisions are not generally copied in this manner. Therefore, it is always a good idea not to go for a precedence when it comes to decision making, especially when it relates to important life decisions. Important life decisions require the person to have a few skills. For example, the person can go for a second thought. So there is an initial response to a certain question. Then one need to discard the initial response and then wait for a while, thinking, focusing, reflecting, and thereafter the person can come back and go for a decision. But then there's no need to imitate or copy a decision that was made for a similar situation. So that's one big reason why this ambiguous phrase is tagged to the end of it. That has made all the difference. It can mean either way. Okay, all good differences or bad differences. Okay, since there is no attempt at influencing the decision of the reader, an ambiguous expression is used. But more than that, it is about action. The speaker waits for some time and then decides to take one way. So that's decision. So action, that's more important. Which type of question are in subjective type, like value-based or direct definition type? Mostly direct definition type. There are just a couple value-based questions. Okay. All right. So is it possible to engineer our emotions using coping skills while going through emotional distress? Of course. It's very true. We all are different human beings with different approaches. And that's the reason why when it comes to coping strategies or coping skills, there is no textbook strategy. Otherwise, we can always go for a handbook of coping skills or handbook of coping strategies. There is no textbook strategy. And the kind of skills and strategies that we generally come across act as guides. They guide us through the process, through the coping process. For example, reappraisal. It guides us through the coping process. But then how you are going to attempt or make a reappraisal is something which depends completely on you, not on the guide. So therefore, there is every possibility that we can engineer our emotions using coping skills. We can. Emotions. For example, you know how people with a certain meditative power can control their emotions. How easily they can control their emotions. You can see there have been instances where people, when we look back, you know, at our ancient times, we'll find the sages and the saints, they could easily control their emotions. They would engineer their emotions. They can easily do that. They can, of course, I mean, these days, this paradise engineering thing is, you know, working towards taking away all negative or challenging emotions and leaving us with just one kind of emotion, that is happiness. But then, even without paradise engineering, we can also engineer our emotions. And that's the reason there are some people whom we call cool. So how can that person be so cool? Because we all know the same person has all kinds of emotions, because those are basic emotions. The same person has anger, fear, sadness. But how is that person cool? How does a person remain cool even in the face of difficulties, challenges? Because the person knows how to regulate his or her emotions. And that's kind of engineering one's you know, emotions. So, right, I responded to that question, Mohit. And then there's a question from Adarsh. Actually, sir, medical condition is not good since, do you mean to say my medical condition is not good since 2 months? And I was not able to attend class. How can I pass the course? Please give me tips, sir. It's, oh my goodness. Yeah, I do understand your problem. I hope you are better now. And then, you know, the transcripts are available, the videos are available. So if it's possible for you, you can quickly take a look at the transcripts and the videos. You'll get to know a lot about the course, at least. So that way, I can only say that. So that's what I can say in response to your query. There is another query from 1234. Sir, as you said, taking action is the only way to deal with mental paralysis. But what if one take incorrect decision of life unintentionally? Then how can one cope up with the stress? Fine. There are several occasions, several instances when we make mistakes while making decisions. But we need to understand, I need to accept that this is just a part of life. I cannot make all right decisions in life. It may also be that because of that one bad decision, my life is ruined. Okay, and I'm under tremendous stress now. What am I going to do? Am I going to, enjoy my stress? Am I going to, project my stress as my biggest achievement? No. The moment somebody is under stress, that person is pushed into the survival mode. And interestingly enough, we are, genetically designed, and we are neurologically designed to return to the safe mode. I'll give you an example. You are walking along with your friend by your pond, say, and then you know that your friend doesn't know how to swim. You suddenly push your friend into the water of the pond. What will your friend do? Will your friend say that, okay, friend, tata, bye-bye, we'll meet the next life? Okay. No. Your friend will first do certain things to somehow come out of the water. Even if your friend doesn't know swimming, your friend will flutter the wings, the arms, to come out of the water. Why do people do that? Why do people fight when they know that they are facing imminent death? They do so because of this neurological design. We are designed in that way so that we always want to return to the safe mode. That means to correct things, to change what has gone wrong, and several other things. So even if somebody makes a bad decision, a bad choice, because of which somebody's life is in risk or life is almost ruined, fine, one can always spring back. There have been several instances in history when people have made bad choices, and the same people have come back to life by making or by overcoming the impact of those bad choices by making just one good decision. They can always come back. Just imagine sometimes, for example, in a cricket match, okay, your captain wins the toss and your captain says, we're going to bat. Your captain misread the pitch, which had some green grass. You go on to bat and you are bundled out badly because you couldn't play, you couldn't negotiate the pace. Fine, you lost that match. Are you going to stop playing cricket? No. You'll be under tremendous stress. There are teams who have lost World Cup finals. Have they stopped playing cricket? They come back and then they fight. I'm always reminded of one cricketing side, New Zealand. See how often it has played the semifinals and finals. They have never won a World Cup, especially this limited overs World Cup. They've never won. Have they stopped playing cricket? Has that country, that nation, banned cricket? No. So similarly, I mean, we don't have to ban our lives just because we have made one bad decision. One needs to think that one can always make one good decision and spring back to life. That's the idea. Okay. And of course, if it is done unintentionally, we can always make up for it. And we can cope with it. Okay. So any other queries or questions? All right. So anything else, any comments or observations that you would like to make on the course, its nature, its organization, which I think would help us revise and improvise the course? your observations, your comments. Okay, thank you very much for that response, Pratyush. All right. So if caregiving, okay, fine, definitely. So we'll be taking into account your suggestion, Suhrit. Caregiving, it's a very important aspect. All right, so if you do not have any further queries or questions, can we call it a day for now? So I would request the host to end this session now. And before we bid farewell to each other, let me wish all the very best to all of you for your upcoming exams. This is just the beginning. All right. So, all right. We are waiting for you now. Vinesh, please.
Sir, I last 3-4 classes I didn't attend, sir. If I coming classes, if I attend, can I get certificate?
You didn't attend the last 3 weeks?
3-4 classes. Yes, sir. 3-4 weeks I didn't attend, sir.
Okay, no issues. You have the videos available. You can watch those videos. You can also read the transcript.
Yes,
So
if I coming classes, if I attend, will I get certificate?
No, I didn't get the second part of your response.
If coming classes, if I attend, can I get certificates?
Of course. Are you writing your exams?
Yes, sir. Now I first year, sir. I last year classes I didn't attend.
Okay. So I don't know much about it. I can't say because the technical matter. So I would like you can post this query on the forum so that you get a reply from the technical team.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, I'll be sharing the list of books with some of you. Okay. Yes, I'll definitely reply. It may take me 1 or 2 days, but I'll definitely reply. So thank you very much for your responses. So if you all, yes, we are going to take each other's leave now. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining this course and being a part of it and enriching this course. In fact, that's our experience as well. So thank you very much. I request the host to end this session now.